Hello and welcome to another episode of Gamestunt. In this episode, we will show you our top 10 video games of 2023. 2023 was a great year for video games, with many titles that delivered amazing experiences across different genres and platforms. Here are our picks for the 10 best video games of 2023, ranked from 10 to 1. 10. Diablo 4. The long-awaited sequel to the legendary action RPG series, Diablo 4 brought back the dark and gritty atmosphere of the original games, while adding new features such as open-world exploration, dynamic weather, and customizable skill trees. The game also offered 5 classes to choose from: Barbarian, Sorceress, Druid, Necromancer, and Rogue, each with their own unique abilities and playstyles. Diablo 4 was a satisfying and addictive loot fest that kept fans hooked for hours. 9. Alan Wake 2. The sequel to the cult classic psychological thriller Alan Wake 2 continued the story of the troubled writer who had to fight against the dark forces that haunted his mind. The game improved on the original's combat mechanics, introducing new weapons and enemies, as well as a flashlight that could be used to manipulate the environment. The game also featured a branching narrative that changed depending on the player's choices and actions, leading to multiple endings and secrets. 8. Final Fantasy XVI. The latest installment in the iconic JRPG series, Final Fantasy XVI, took place in a medieval fantasy world called Valisthea, where 6 nations vied for control over the crystals that granted them magical power. The game followed the journey of Clive Rosfield, a young knight who became the host of a powerful fire spirit called Phoenix, and his brother Joshua, the dominant of Phoenix, and the heir to the throne of their nation. The game featured a real-time combat system that allowed the player to switch between different weapons and abilities, as well as summon the icons, the colossal beasts that represented the crystals. The game also boasted stunning graphics, a rich lore, and a memorable soundtrack. 7. Starfield. The first new IP from Bethesda Game Studios in 25 years, Starfield was a sci-fi RPG that let the player explore a vast and diverse galaxy. The game offered a lot of freedom and customization, allowing the player to create their own character, choose their faction, and shape their own story. The game also featured a realistic and immersive simulation of space travel, with realistic physics, dynamic weather, and planetary landing. Starfield was a game that fulfilled the dreams of many sci-fi fans. Coming in at number 6 is Lords of the Fallen. The action RPG Lords of the Fallen delivers a challenging and rewarding experience. The game took place in a dark and brutal world where the player had to face the Lords, the fallen gods, who ruled over the land. The game featured a deep and tactical combat system, with a variety of weapons, armor, and skills to choose from. The battles were fun to play, and the creepy environments and characters were stunning. Taking the 5th spot is Hogwarts Legacy, the game that many Harry Potter fans had been waiting for. Hogwarts Legacy was a prequel to the famous Wizarding saga, set in the late 1800s. The game allowed the player to create their own witch or wizard, and attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The game featured a rich and immersive open world with many locations to explore, such as Hogsmeade, the Forbidden Forest, and Diagon Alley. The game also had a complex and branching story, with many choices and consequences that affected the player's reputation, relationships, and alignment. Hogwarts Legacy was a game that captured the magic and wonder of the Harry Potter universe. At number 4, we have Baldur's Gate. The long-awaited 3rd entry in the acclaimed RPG series, Baldur's Gate 3 was a faithful adaptation of the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rule set, with a rich and detailed world, a diverse and charismatic cast of characters, and a complex and engaging story. The game allowed the player to create their own character, or choose from one of the pre-made origin characters, each with their own backstory and personality. The game also featured a turn-based combat system, with a lot of tactical options and environmental interactions. The game also had a multiplayer mode, where up to 4 players could cooperate or compete in the same campaign. Taking the 3rd spot is Remnant 2. The sequel to the 2019 sleeper hit, Remnant 2 was a co-op action shooter that mixed elements of sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. The game took place in a post-apocalyptic world where the player had to fight against the Root, an interdimensional force that invaded Earth and corrupted everything in its path. The game featured a procedurally generated world with different biomes, enemies, and events. The game also had a robust crafting system with a lot of weapons, mods, and armor to create an upgrade. The game was a blast to play solo or with friends with a lot of replay value and challenge. Coming in at number 2 is Armored Core 6. The 6th installment in the cult classic mech combat series, Armored Core 6 was a return to form for the franchise, with a focus on customization and gameplay. The game allowed the player to build their own mech, or AC, from scratch, choosing from hundreds of parts, weapons, and colors. The game also had a realistic and responsive physics engine with a lot of environmental destruction and dynamic weather. The game also had a deep and immersive story mode with a lot of missions, factions, and secrets. The game also had a competitive and cooperative multiplayer mode, where players could test their skills and show off their creations. And finally, at number 1 we have Lies of P. The surprise hit of the year, Lies of P was a dark and twisted reimagining of the classic fairy tale Pinocchio, set in a steampunk version of 19th century London. The game followed the story of P, a wooden puppet who wanted to become a real boy, and his creator Geppetto, a mad scientist who experimented on humans and machines. The game featured a unique and innovative gameplay mechanic where the player could lie to manipulate the world and the characters, but at the cost of growing their nose, which could be used as a weapon or a tool. The game also had a stunning art style, a haunting soundtrack, and a gripping story with a lot of twists and turns. Lies of P was a game that challenged the player's morality and sanity and left a lasting impression. So we have come to the end of this episode. Congratulations to Lies of P for being the Gamestunt Game of the Year. I want to thank you all for watching, liking and subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one.